Excuse me? Turn around. Just turn around right there. And it's like when you go to the Grand Canyon, and it's so vast, and we are so small, how can somebody think about themselves? Worship is not about you. It's you walk up to the Grand Canyon, and something just comes out of you, like, whoa! Or maybe it comes out of like this, shh, shh, shh. Or maybe it's complete silence, and you're just like, at the majesty and the beauty and the vastness of the Grand Canyon. I've never been there before, but I feel like if I'd walk up, I would just be silent for 2, 3, 4 minutes. I'd be in awe of what this is. One of the biggest misconceptions is that worship is about us, but it's not. Worship is about something bigger than us. And we were designed to worship God, although over the years we have strayed and we worship this thing right here. Or maybe it was this thing right here. Or maybe it was this phone, or maybe this game, or this relationship, or this team. We have begun to fill our cup with something that we weren't designed to worship. And it lasts for a little bit, but never satisfies. And when we walk to the Grand Canyon, we walk right up to the Grand Canyon, we look down and we take it in. What I believe worship is, and it's in your notes, is worship is a natural response. It's a natural response that comes from the overflow of your heart. When you walk up to the Grand Canyon, you don't have to stop and think, okay, there's a Grand Canyon in front of me. It's big, it's huge, beautiful. How should I react right now? No. Worship is natural. Whoa! It's natural. It comes out. You don't have to think about it. It just comes up natural. Worship is a natural response that comes from the overflow of your heart. So I want to do a better job defining it because Jake's definition isn't that good. So let's, once again, evergreen. Let's look at what Jesus is saying. Let's look at what Jesus is doing. Matthew chapter 15, verses 8 and 9. Once again, you can turn there. I think it's also in your notes, I believe. I need to turn there. Matthew 15, verse 8 and 9. So Jesus, he's with his disciples, but he's also these Pharisees, these really religious people, that they come to him and they say, Jesus, your disciples, your followers, they didn't wash their hands before the meal. They're breaking commandments. And Jesus, I can just see him shaking his head. And he goes on to say this. He says in verse 8 and 9, this people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. You can see Jesus' heart is broken right now. These people, they honor me with their lips, with what they say, but their heart is far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrine the commandments of men. He's saying a lot right here. I'll try to break it down just a little bit. He's saying that these Pharisees are they're making their own commandments off of God's. So they're making these extra commandments, and they're making it and putting it on everybody and saying that you have to follow them. And it's all about a show. It's all about doing the right thing and saying the right thing. And Jesus says, I don't care what you do. It's not about you. It is not about you. And he points out 2 types of worship. Number 1 is vain worship. Number 1 is vain worship. I looked up the word vain, and it was kind of funny. I think it goes along with Evergreen series. It literally means fruitless. Fruitless worship. It's like a tree that grows up and it has rotten fruit. The tree looks beautiful. It's great. There's green leaves, but when you get to the fruit, it's rotten. It looks the part, but its fruit, it's not even there. Vain worship. The focus of vain worship is on yourself. How do I look right now? Did I say the right thing? Did that person over there really think highly of me when I did that? That's vain worship. Jesus condemns it. He hates it. It hurts him because he created us for himself. And he says in number 2, and what Jesus says is true worship. Number 2, heartfelt worship. Heartfelt worship. The focus is on Jesus. I looked up what heart means in the Greek as well, just because I'm nerdy like that. A few nerdy things that I'll share with you. One is I looked up heart. And it said the center of your being. All your desires, the center of your life. Your affections. Jesus is saying, I want you to worship me with all of your life. I want you to worship me with your affections. When you see me, I want you to love me. Now I'm going to go in deeper into that because that kind of sounds weird. I want you to love me. It's like a crazy boyfriend or girlfriend. I just want you to love me. That's not what Jesus is saying. Let me just give me a second. I'll get into that. But he is saying, I want all of your heart. I want all of your heart. Now, when you see what Jesus has done, just like going to the Grand Canyon, when you see what Jesus has done for you and all of who he is, and we just get a little glimpse of who he is, and then we get another little glimpse of who he is, and then another time we get another little glimpse of who he is, it starts creating this natural response in our heart, and we're just like, oh, I love you. The more you get to know him, the more you love him. And it creates this natural response, and that's what flows out of you. The difference between vain worship and heartfelt worship is this. Vain worship is about what you do. And heartfelt worship is about what Jesus has done. Complete difference. Complete difference. Heartfelt worship has nothing to do with you, but when you see Jesus and all that he is and all that he's done, it's this response. Natural response. You don't have to be like, oh, so Jesus did that, this, how should I react? How are they reacting? Okay, move forward. No, that's vain worship. When you get to know Jesus and you get to see him for who he really is and how he designed you and how he created you, it starts to create this natural response that flows out of your heart. Now I'm going just a little bit deeper, so just continue to hang with me. Because we see that to exalt the Father, we have to fulfill our purpose or do what we were created to do, which is worship. And Jesus just defined what true worship is. It's something that from all of our being, we're giving all of ourselves in affections and loves and desire to Jesus. Okay, but how? And I just want to say right here, I believe that worship is made evident by our obedience. Worship is made evident by our obedience. Just because we're doing the right thing doesn't mean we're worshiping. But the evidence of our worship is obedience. And I'm going to go into that just a little bit to kind of make sense of that. We go right back to John 17:4. We're going right back to Jesus to answer this question. Right back to him. John 17:4, he says, I have glorified you on earth. Or I've exalted you on earth by what? Accomplishing the work that you gave me to do. Or doing what you told me to do. Or in other words, obeying you. I have glorified you by obeying you. 1 John 5 says this. It says, if you love God, you keep and you obey his commandments. Now that's kind of hard because we've heard 10 commandments, all these commandments. And we go back in the Old Testament, there are hundreds of commandments. But fast forward thousands of years later, and Jesus takes all of those commandments and he makes them into one. He makes them into one. He simplifies it for us. And he says that this is the commandment, to love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your mind. And he said the second is great, is just as equal as loving your neighbor as yourself. That was in Matthew 22. So we see that when you exalt the Father, it's fulfilling the purpose for which he created us, worshiping him from a natural response of affection and love. When we see what he has done, and we hear what he's done as we spend time with him. And when we obey him by loving God. He makes it simple. We obey him just by loving God and loving people. So what does that look like? Because I hear that, I've asked this question many times. Okay, so I worship and I obey God by loving him and loving people, but how? How do I love God? How do I love people? I came across this verse in Galatians chapter 6, verse 2. You can turn there if you want. Galatians chapter 6, verse 2. It's one of the most amazing